Okay, we are back with the next part of chapter 6. She was just in the film on the last one talking about how you have to check temperatures at a minimum every 4 hours, and if it's in the danger zone, it must be thrown out. But she prefers to check the temperature every 2 hours to leave time for corrective action. So we will finish the last 5 minutes of the video and then proceed with the slides for the extra information.
This might sound basic or obvious, but always cover the food to protect food from contaminants. The covers also help maintain the internal temperature of food. After handling food safely and cooking it properly, you don't want to risk contamination when serving it. That means training your kitchen and service staff properly and setting standards and procedures for any self-service areas. You need to train your staff to follow these procedures for serving food safely. Your staff should only use clean and sanitized utensils for serving, and they should use separate utensils for each food item, then clean and sanitize them properly after changing serving tasks. On top of that, the utensils should be cleaned and sanitized at least once every 4 hours during continuous use. You need to take every measure to minimize bare hand contact with food that's cooked or ready to eat. Your staff should handle food with tongs, deli sheets, or gloves. Some regulatory authorities allow bare hand contact in an operation if they've received prior approval. To do this, they must first outline policies for employee health and training in hand washing and personal hygiene. Check your local regulatory requirements to see if this applies to your operation. You also have to establish and enforce safe food handling practices with everybody on your staff. Everyone should take care to handle glassware and dishes properly. They shouldn't touch the food contact areas of plates, bowls, glasses, or cups. When a server holds a dish, they should do it holding the bottom or the edge. Cups should be held by their handles, and glassware should be held by the middle, bottom, or stem. They should also be careful to hold flatware and utensils at the handle. And make sure your flatware storage area is set up so servers grasp handles, not food contact surfaces. When your servers are getting ice, they should use ice scoops or tongs to do it. And they should never scoop ice with their bare hands or use a glass or cup because it might chip or break. It's also important to remember to store ice scoops in a sanitary location and not in the ice. The last area I want to talk about is self-service. Now, I know from experience that buffets and food bars can be a real challenge. That's because so many people have no idea how easy it is for food to be contaminated. A lot of our work here is protecting the customers from themselves. The best way to prevent contamination in the buffet area is to have it monitored closely by employees trained in food safety. You should follow these guidelines to prevent contamination and time temperature abuse. Remember to use sneeze guards or food shields to protect the food on display. The sneeze guards should be located 14 inches, 36 centimeters above the food counter, and shields should extend 7 inches, 18 centimeters beyond the food. You also need to identify all food items on the buffet. That means labeling all the items on your food bar. Lastly, customers can't be allowed to refill soiled plates or use soiled flatware at the food bar. Like I said before, there's a lot to know and a lot to watch out for. The busier it gets, the more closely you have to pay attention to the details. And I mean all the details. Sometimes it seems like you have to keep one eye on the time and the other eye on the temperature and the eyes in the back of your head watching everything else. So train your people right. I mean, they can be a lot of help to you. Every one of them is like an extra pair of trained eyes.
Okay, let's get back to that. When prepping food, make sure workstations, cutting boards, and utensils are cleaned and sanitized. Only remove as much food from the cooler as you can prep in a short period of time. This helps prevent time temperature abuse. Return prepped food to the cooler or cook it as quickly as possible. Food and color additives. Only use additives approved by your local regulatory authority. Never use more additives than are allowed by law. Never use additives to alter the appearance of food. Do not sell produce treated with sulfites before it was received in the operation. Never add sulfites to produce that will be eaten raw. Present food honestly. Do not use the following to misrepresent the appearance of food: food additives or color additives, colored overwraps, colored lights. Present food in the way it is described. For example, if a menu offers fried perch, another fish cannot be substituted. Food not presented honestly must be thrown out. Corrective actions. Food must be thrown out in the following situations: when it's handled by a staff who have been restricted or excluded from the operation due to illness, when it is contaminated by hands or bodily fluids, such as from sneezing, when it has exceeded the time and temperature requirements designed to keep food safe. Sometimes food can be reconditioned, restored to a safe condition. Thawing. When thawing food under running water, submerge food under running drinkable water at 70 degrees or lower. Use a clean and sanitized food prep sink. Use water flow strong enough to wash away food bits, and never let the temperature of the food go above 41 degrees Fahrenheit for longer than 4 hours. Reduced oxygen packaging, which is ROP. Frozen fish received in ROP packaging must be thawed carefully. If the label states that the product must remain frozen until use, then remove the fish from packaging before thawing under refrigeration, before or immediately after thawing under running water. When soaking or storing produce in a standing water or ice water slurry, do not mix different items and multiple batches of the same item. Refrigerate and hold sliced melons, cut tomatoes, and cut leafy greens at 41 degrees or lower. Do not serve raw seed sprouts if primarily serving a high-risk population. To control pathogens, produce must be washed with certain types of chemicals. Water containing ozone. Eggs and egg mixtures. Handle pooled eggs if allowed with care. Cook promptly after mixing or store at 41 degrees or lower. Clean and sanitize containers used to hold them before making a new batch. Make ice from water that is safe to drink. Never use ice as an ingredient if it was used to keep food cold. Use clean and sanitized containers and scoops. Store scoops outside of the ice machine in a clean, protected location. Never hold ice in containers that held chemicals or raw meat, seafood, or poultry. Never touch ice with hands or use a glass to scoop ice. A variance is required when packaging fresh juice on site for sale at a later time, unless the juice has a warning label. Smoking food to preserve it, but not to enhance flavor. Using food additives or components to preserve or alter food so it no longer needs time and temperature control for safety. Or when curing food. A variance is required when custom processing animals for personal use, such as dressing a deer. Packaging foods using a reduced oxygen packaging method, which is called ROP, reduced oxygen packaging, sprouting seeds or beans, or offering live shellfish from a display tank. Required minimum internal cooking temperatures. Anything that is stuffed, made with fish, meat, or poultry, or dishes that include previously cooked TCS ingredients. 165. 155 degrees is anything that is mechanically tenderized, including ostrich, emu, ground seafood, anything that's chopped and minced. Cooking temperature for seafood, including fish, shellfish, and crustacea, or commercially raised game, is 145 degrees. Now don't get too wild with this one, but I just want to point out with this frame that 145 degrees for 4 minutes is what a typical roast is, okay? But if you're looking to make a prime rib or something that's more rare, be aware that for every few degrees that you drop down, say you try to cook something at 130, it has to remain at that 130 degree mark for 112 minutes. So from the starting point of 145, you see as the temperature goes down, it goes from 5 to 8 to 12 to 18. So the lower it goes, the longer it has to be at that temperature to kill the bacteria. Required minimum internal cooking temperatures, 135 for fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes. If partially cooking meat, seafood, poultry, or eggs, or dishes containing these items, never cook the food longer than 60 minutes during initial cooking. Cool the food immediately after initial cooking. Freeze or refrigerate the food after cooling it. If refrigerating, hold it at 41 or lower and store away from ready-to-eat food. Heat the food to its required minimum internal temperature before selling or serving it. Cool the food if it will not be served immediately or held for service. Procedures for partial cooking should describe how to monitor and document requirements, which corrective actions will be taken if requirements are not met, how par-cooked items will be marked after initial cooking, how par-cooked food will be stored separately from ready-to-eat food. Disclosures. Disclose any raw or undercooked TCS items on the menu. Noted on the menu next to the items, an asterisk with a footnote can be used. The footnote must state that the item is raw or undercooked or contains raw or undercooked ingredients. Reminder: advise customers who order raw or undercooked TCS food of the increased risk of foodborne illness. Post a notice in the menu. Provide this information using brochures, table tents, or signs. The FDA advises against offering these items on a children's menu if the items are raw, undercooked, and those things are meat, poultry, seafood, and eggs. Never serve raw seed sprouts, raw or undercooked eggs over easy eggs, raw oysters on a half shell, rare hamburgers, or unpasteurized milk or juice. Factors that affect cooling: thickness or density of the food, size of the food. Large food items cool more slowly than smaller items, and the storage containers. Stainless steel transfers heat away from food faster than plastic. Shallow pans let the heat from food disperse faster than deep pans. Methods for cooling food: you can stir it with an ice bottle, or use ice or cold water as an ingredient. When storing food for further cooling, loosely cover the food. Food can be left uncovered if protected from contamination. Storing uncovered containers above other food, especially raw seafood, meat, and poultry, will help prevent cross-contamination. I want to let you know that this part is up and we will have a third part of Chapter 6.